Hello everyone and welcome back guys to episode 4 of Jamie and I's The Unnamed Motorsport Podcast, where we're back once again recapping the Imola Grand Prix, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. I said in the preview video I was going to get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong again over the course of today's video. But yeah, a lot to rattle through this week, it's safe to say. Bahrain was a brilliant race for all the right reasons. Imola was probably a brilliant race for not so many of the right reasons, I think it must be said as well. But yeah, Jamie, sort of initial thoughts then of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. What were you thinking?
Well, it was a very good race for starters. It was almost like a completely different kind of race to Bahrain, but the opening two races have been really, given us like opposite ends of the motorsport spectrum, really, with Bahrain being almost a pure racers type race, and then this one being absolute chaos, but still really fun to watch. So yeah, it's been a good start to the season. Hopefully it'll continue long into it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've kind of had the good, the ugly. Now I think we're just waiting for the bad, aren't we? Which will probably be the remaining 21 races this year. When is France on the calendar, sorry? But yeah, no. Yeah. A lot to get through, though, obviously, from the Imola Grand Prix. Obviously, generally, we don't talk too much about qualifying. I guess sort of the main talking points from Quali were sort of Yuki Tsunoda's spin. Again, not really a lot can be said. He's a rookie. It was a fairly simple mistake. I mean, he's Yuki Tsunoda, so people won't hate on him anyway. No matter what he does, he swears and F's and blinds on the radio, but apparently that's funny.
It's fine because he's 5'3", Matt.
Exactly, yeah. It's fine because he's cute and you could fit him in your handbag if you wanted to. Apparently that makes it all okay at the end of the day. I say that, I still don't mind Tsunoda, but I'd think the hype is interesting, is the way I'm going to word it. But yeah, apart from that, Hamilton's pole as well. I think that was quite unexpected. Perez on the front row as well. Was obviously very good for him. But again, qualifying very quickly became irrelevant because before the race even began, you had a bit of chaos and carnage. Alonso, we spoke the praises last weekend, and this weekend he's been nowhere.
I'll be honest, I completely missed all of that because I started watching it about 10 to 1, sorry.
Right, so I'm going to have to run it through for you. So Alonso then, basically what happened was obviously everyone does their warm-up laps, obviously going out to the circuit. Alonso bins it because the team send him out on inters when it's far too wet. Basically, had half the track was ready for full wet tyres, and the other half the track was ready for dry tyres, pretty much. And then you sort of had a couple of corners in the middle where it was intermediate. So everyone was sort of just guessing at that point as to what tyres they were meant to be going on. Obviously, that left us. It did dry out a bit ready for the start of the Grand Prix, so obviously pretty much everyone was on the intermediates. For the first couple of laps, though, obviously it was all pretty even. But again, I think the main talking point, though, of the start was, of course, Verstappen. Now, there were some rumbles around the paddock, obviously going, Verstappen is wet weather starts last year. Obviously, Turkey was probably the best example. Red Bull couldn't get the car off the line last year. That has certainly changed. I think it's fair for us to agree.
I think there's so much variation in how good or bad a driver's start is in the wet. I don't think you can read too much into, this start last year was bad, so it's going to be bad again. Turkey was such a anomalous race in all sort of levels, really. But yeah, it was a very, very good start. Obviously, third place on the grid to get into the lead, even before turn one, really. He was side by side with Hamilton. It was a very good start, and I think he needed to get that start, otherwise he would have been, struggling to get past. Obviously, it's a difficult track to pass in the dry, and in the wet it's even harder, as we saw throughout the race.
Yeah, and I think obviously we talk about that start, was absolutely brilliant. I mean, Perez was dealt with instantly, and then obviously it was almost three. Well, I mean, Perez got a better start than Hamilton as well. I think obviously a lot of people forgot about it. You just had to bail out down in towards turn one, otherwise it was going to be 3 wide, and he was definitely getting the one to be hung out to dry. But yeah, the contact down at turn one as well then. Obviously the FIA did nothing about it. I'll be honest, now this probably comes from a Hamilton fan as well. At the end of the day, I felt Hamilton had enough of the car alongside to warrant some room, but I can completely understand on the other hand, people thought it was Verstappen's corner. Of course he's going to do that. Why on earth wouldn't you when obviously we are hopefully shaping up to have such a big title fight?
Yeah, it would have been stupid to leave him room there. You got the inside line. You're ahead by the smallest amount. It reminds me a lot.
He wasn't at the apex though, was he? You did see Hamilton have his wheels in front.
I don't know. It reminded me of Austria a couple of years ago with Verstappen and Leclerc contact, which that was more clear cut, like potential penalty range. I thought this was absolutely nothing. I thought it was not even instant. Hamilton probably should have backed out rather than going over the bouncy curbs. Should have just gone on the grass. But
I think that's the whole thing, though, isn't it? That Hamilton's got to sort of remind Max over the course of this year. Is obviously most people still jump out of his way.
Yeah.
And Hamilton, at the very least, has got to make it so Max second guesses whether he's going to bail out. Yeah. And I think, obviously, although it didn't work out for Hamilton this time, you've got to think, I think it was Bahrain 2018, wasn't it? When Verstappen tried to completely barge him off the road and Hamilton wasn't having any of it. And obviously Verstappen got the puncture. And then I'm pretty certain retired from the Grand Prix, didn't he? Not long after that.
He damaged the differential in that contact.
Yeah. So obviously I think Hamilton's one of the only drivers, still Charles Leclerc as well as another one, that Verstappen hopefully has some sort of second guessing about, because pretty much any other driver's just jumping out of his way at that point, which I think fair play to him. It's basically what Senna used to do back in the 80s and 90s. But then, of course, lap 1, that wasn't the only thing that went on. We had Latifi. Now, again, another man who, qualifying all of Friday, it was the best we've ever seen Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah, the Williams looked quality in the dry.
The Williams looked like a good car, yeah.
He looked way stronger than Russell all throughout qualifying until the bit that mattered, and then Russell out-qualified him, because of course he did.
So, of course he did. Mr. Saturday.
Yeah, he didn't really cover himself in glory on the Sunday either, Latifi. I think he was running about 16th, 15th or something, obviously went off.
I think he was 13th, I want to say 13th, 14th.
It was all just spray, so you couldn't really see much anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But, he went off at Aqua Minerale, came back on the track and just didn't even consider the fact that there'd be another car, and then just tried to force Mazepin off, who held his ground, and Latifi ended up in the barriers. So
I was going to say, I don't think Latifi even knew he was there, and obviously until he got speared into the wall. Well, I say he got speared into the wall. He put himself in the wall, really. Yeah. Again, I think a lot of people love to hate on Mazepin, but if you're saying that was Mazepin's fault, I think you might hate him just a little bit too much to have any sort of sense at that point. Mazepin, there was nothing he could do in that situation. Latifi came back on the track and just squeezed him for seemingly, again, it seemed like seemingly no reason, and it would just, to me, seem like Latifi had no idea he was there.
Not a great race for Williams, though, as we'll come on to later. But
yes, it was. Frank Williams' 75th birthday, and like I said, we'll speak about it a bit more. Is he really only
75? Wow.
Yeah, I think he's 75. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure running Williams probably ages you quite badly. We'll find out soon. Claire's only like 24 or something. But then, of course, obviously that big crash for Latifi. Obviously, luckily he was able to walk away from that one all unscathed, as modern Formula 1 cars generally obviously are pretty good. Perez obviously then made the mistake under the safety car, got penalised for retaking positions. It seemed like a bit of a weird one. Sort of obviously what happened, he binned it up at the top of the hill, wasn't it? Was it Variante?
It was turn 9, I can't remember what it's called. The one before Minerale, I know that.
Yeah, I know it was the one before Aqua Minerale, after Tosa, isn't it? Is it the Variante Alta, or is that the chicane?
I can't remember. It's all Italian, isn't it?
Funnily enough, an Italian Grand Prix circuit does tend to have Italian corner names, yes. But yeah, obviously, so we saw Perez bin it there in sort of a very weird fashion. I think it was, who was it, Lando, or was it Ricardo in one of the front? Was it Ricardo and Leclerc? Was it Ricardo and Gasly, was it?
Leclerc already had him before the safety car.
Yeah, so obviously Ricardo and Gasly get past. Ricardo then seemingly slowed down a lot.
It was strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the drivers didn't really know the rules, which is weird considering, well, Ricardo and Perez have been racing
their jobs
for a decade, so
yeah.
You'd expect them to probably know the rules by now, but yeah, he shouldn't have taken back the position. Slam dunk penalty, 10 seconds was fair enough, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was sort of a bit weird as well, the fact that obviously we saw Red Bull last week. Well, not last week, but last time out, obviously forced Max to let Hamilton back pass. Obviously, they got told to anyway. But they apparently didn't get told to let Sergio back through, or... I don't know.
He took it before the chance, I think.
Yeah, but he could have let them both back through. I think they have let drivers off in the past if they then let them back past. But again, I don't know, obviously, if Hamilton 2009 won it, whether it just creates more difficulties than it's worth as well at the end of the day. So obviously
that was more to try to deceive the stewards, I think.
There was bigger issues when that happened, yeah. But it was confusing enough on the track, wasn't it? Because everyone was just there scrambling with no idea what to do. Then, obviously, shortly after Perez's mistake, we saw Schumacher warming up his tyres. Now, I don't think I've seen in a long time anyone warm up their tyres that aggressively. Never mind in the wet. It looked like it was out of control about 4 times before he actually hit the wall.
And he was on full wet tyres, and the part of the track he was on was pretty much bone dry.
Yeah.
Although it was very limited water. But, yeah, that car looks absolutely awful to try and control. So it's understandable, but it is a bit of a rookie error, really. But
yeah, he's a rookie
Yeah,
at the end of the
exactly.
day. Yeah, which again, obviously for him was a bit difficult. Obviously, I know there was a load of psychological coaching from the team straight after that, just sort of saying it's going to be a long race, things like that. And of course, then he
wasn't
wasn't.
3 laps. Yeah,
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to pit because his front wing was
close to
blocking the pit lane exit, so no one could get out again, which wasn't ideal for him. As a while there. Then, of course, safety car comes back in. You've still got, I think it was Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly decided they were going to... Oh, no.
Ocon pit.
Ocon
Yeah, he
pit.
bailed.
So it was just Pierre Gasly
It was
left.
Gasly and the Haas cars that were still wet, but they're pretty rare.
Was it Gasly and the Hasses as well? Yeah. That were out on the full wet, hoping that the rain would still come. I mean, you had Gasly's team going, there's going to be rain in 5 minutes, and everyone just going... Where? There needs to be rain in Imola, not anywhere else. So obviously, Gasly, it was. I mean, he helped Carlos Sainz a lot. There's no denying that because Gasly went from 5th to 17th and was losing 8 seconds a lap to the guys in front, and still AlphaTauri going, it's going to be fine. It's going to come back to us.
Yeah, the rain's on its way. Come on.
Yeah, which was... So, I mean, you just had Gasly forming an absolute roadblock with, like, one car being able to get past him each lap. Sainz then binning it about 4 times, I want to say.
He was in the gravel, like, every lap for the start of the race and still never lost a place because there was 20 seconds back to Gasly.
Gasly was somehow throwing away more time on the wets, which was just a bit ridiculous. So, Sainz got absolutely carried in the first half of the Grand Prix, or otherwise he would have been buried down in about P16. Then, of course, we had not quite a Fernando is faster than you, but certainly Lando Norris was... I mean, Q3 obviously wasn't quite the same.
Should have been on the front row, really.
It should have been third.
Oh, was it third? Yeah.
Perez still don't go quicker in the end. But yeah, Lando looked rapid all weekend, and I mean that didn't change on Sunday. I mean he was very quickly on the radio to the team going, "I'm a lot faster than Ricciardo." I think the team knew he was a lot faster than Ricciardo. It seemed like a really weird weekend from Ricciardo. He just wasn't really there at all.
Similar to Bahrain.
It was a
really.
weekend of like the new drivers, wasn't it? It was really strange.
Sainz said something after qualifying that was like, "Oh, this track is so dependent on confidence. So the drivers who were new to the teams, so people like Ricciardo, Alonso, Sainz, just really didn't have the confidence to push 100% in qualifying and really attack the curbs as much as he needed to. Well,
he's sliding in towards like the Villeneuve chicane and things like that, obviously where you've got the quick flick one way and then obviously the proper 90-degree turn the other. Obviously, the back end of the car is just so unstable through corners like that. You get it on the sim as well. I mean, Villeneuve chicane, Aqua Minerale, not the Variante Alta as well. Just 2 horrible corners if you're not confident in a car as well. You can lose so much time through there. And then, of course, you start to get... Obviously, you've still got Gasly going backwards every lap, causing carnage and losing time for everyone behind him. Then it sort of starts to calm down a bit. You sort of get a proper race starting to form, everything like that. And then, of course, you get the call for dries, which Red Bull absolutely nailed, it must be said.
I think they were quite just on their toes, as they usually are. Like, they saw Vettel on, I think, mediums was going purple. So instantly it's
they
like...
knew then.
Right, if Vettel's going purple, either it's 2013 or it's time for dries. So...
Check the calendar quickly.
Yeah. And obviously it's not 2013, so they just boxed through Verstappen straight away. I think Mercedes were potentially a little bit too slow on that call. Maybe a lap too late.
I think Mercedes didn't want to be the ones to make the call. I think that was the thing.
I suppose there's nothing to lose, really, is there, by going a lap longer? Because if they pit, they're going to still be behind. Might as well try something else. So,
and it's that whole thing of if Verstappen makes a mistake, trying to not lose the lead, you sort of try and force the error onto him if you can. But yeah, obviously Red Bull absolutely nailed that. Hamilton then pit 1 lap later, like you said, and he came out. I think obviously he had a slower pit stop anyway. Red Bull still have not lost their ability to pit well, so obviously he came out not much further behind, but it was further behind after obviously the pit stops. And then it all kicks off. Pretty much the halfway stage of the Grand Prix. You've got Hamilton and Verstappen obviously trying to cut through all the midfield, or basically Pierre Gasly's train.
Yeah, I think it was actually Stroll's train at that point.
Was it Stroll's train?
It was Stroll in 7th, and you had Bottas in 8th, Russell in 9th, and then Schumacher another lap down between them, and then Raikkonen. And then you got Verstappen and Hamilton trying to get through all of them. And it was just, obviously there's nowhere to let people through because it's so narrow and there's only one line of dry and no one's going to jump out the way, really. So it was just a mess. And then eventually we saw what happened.
Yeah,
Hamilton went for it.
Russell had an interesting 3 miles of Imola. It's safe to be said. So first of all, obviously, getting in the way of Hamilton is a bit strong, but he forced Hamilton onto the wet line. Obviously, Hamilton then puts it in the gravel trap. Fair play to him for getting it out.
I was so surprised he kept it going. It was very impressive.
You honestly do think, I'd argue, every other driver on the grid, pretty much, with the exception of Raikkonen, I want to say, and all I'm thinking of is Kota 2017, I think it must have been.
That was 15, I think you're thinking of.
Was it 15?
He was buried in a tyre wall and
he was buried in it and still managed to get it back out, just driving it, But I think really, arguably, those two and maybe sort of 1 or 2 other drivers would have been able to get it out and carry on.
Out of that.
You'd back Alonso to get out of that, would you? Possibly. I mean, he spent most of the day spinning anyway, so he had plenty of practice. Yeah, actually, to be fair, you say that. He managed to do it in on the warm-up, or like the parade, trying to get to the track. He didn't quite go that deep in, but yeah, I mean, you would have looked like the likes of, I reckon, Verstappen would have got angry and turned the engine off, saying he couldn't get out. Probably buried
Basically,
it. So,
anyone who spins the wheels would just out of the race. He'd beat you.
Exactly,
Hamilton was so intelligent to keep the engine so...
The fact that you can remain calm in those instances show why he's a 7-time world champion. You can talk about the qualifying pace, you can talk about everything else, but it's moments like that show... when like obviously people go on about the cliches, he never gives in and all this.
Yeah, he actually doesn't.
That is a moment where he doesn't at all.
Like, you see it so many times. I saw a tweet yesterday that was like a screenshot of Monaco 08, a screenshot of Silverstone in 2017.
2017.
Or was it 17 or 18? No, it was 18, I think, when he got spun around. And then this one, there was one other I can't remember now. But like all of those races where he's been either pointing the wrong way or had a puncture and he still finished first or second.
So obviously Hamilton, that stat was just insane. I did see the same tweet as you were on about with the 4 pictures. And then Russell's interesting Imola lap gets even worse. This was by far and away, I think, the most controversial moment of the entire Grand Prix. I think we can both agree. The crash between Bottas and Russell and all the aftermath in the media from it.
Yeah, very interesting. It was quite exciting, actually. I thought that Russell really, going in on Bottas, really. I think slightly unfairly. Obviously, the incident, we can talk about that. I think it was very close. Obviously, in the way, it's so difficult to pass anyway.
Yeah.
Russell was on the outside. There's always a slight kink before the chicane. Bottas was on the inside.
There's 2, actually.
Yeah, there's 2, but the second one, the left-hand one, Bottas was just taking his line on the dry line. Because the dry line obviously is really narrow on the left and then swings back to the right-hand side, it was as if Russell thought Bottas had weaved on him, basically, but all he was doing was taking the dry line.
Yeah, it was,
and that meant Russell went on the wet stuff, lost it, and took them both out.
On the one hand, I mean, right, first of all then, I can't really ask that because I can't put blame on one or the other entirely. I can completely understand that Bottas was trying to stick to the dry line. On the other hand, surely you've got to be able to observe other cars around you as well.
Yeah.
Because personally, I did feel in that moment, I sort of felt Russell was right in the fact that he said Bottas just didn't give you any space. You cannot be that lack of... you can't have that lack of observation in a Formula 1 car. Now, whether it's because he thought, I've got a Williams behind me, it's not going to be a threat to T1, and there was... might have played on his mind a bit, but the fact that he squeezed him out there, and again, I don't believe Bottas did it on purpose. Bottas just isn't that kind of driver. To be honest, Bottas hasn't got the balls to do it, let's be fair. Let's be honest.
Especially not to a Mercedes stablemate. And...
Exactly. I mean, Verstappen spoke about it before, hasn't he? When I think it was 2018 where they did like the overtake of the year and Ricciardo won with his dive bomb.
Oh, yeah, and Bottas tapped.
Bottas, yeah. And then Max was like, it don't count, he was on Bottas, he jumps out of the way. And you sort of like, he's got a point, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But I mean, Bottas has had nightmares of wet races pretty much permanently in his entire career. I think I saw a stat somewhere where I think Canada 2013 is like the only good wet race Bottas has ever had.
He put it third on the grid in Williams. That was like 8th or 9th fastest in the wet. Which is
but apart from that, I mean, Turkey last year was probably the worst example, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was it, 5-6 spins in the end?
Yeah.
And just not a fun weekend. And I think a lot of people were sort of expecting the same here. And that's the moment where you really sort of realise why Hamilton earns all the money that Bottas doesn't. in races like that as well. Whilst Hamilton's still trying to bury himself at a gravel trap, I hasten to add. At that
the thing
moment.
is, Hamilton buried himself in a gravel trap, spent about 60 seconds getting out, and we're still ahead of Bottas.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of mad, isn't it? But then, of course, obviously, yeah, Russell felt like Bottas swung across him. I can sort of understand why, obviously, in the heat of the moment, Russell probably did think that. I mean, again, it was another big crash. I don't think Russell could have really done much as well once he sort of got there. He couldn't brake.
No, not at all.
Because otherwise,
he
was
so
going
fast
round.
he had to go on the wet part of the track, which just aquaplaned him completely.
Exactly. He clipped obviously got some wheel spin on the grass at 330 kph, and obviously there was nowhere for him or Bottas to go at that point. I think that was sort of both their destiny decided, understandably so. And to be honest, I think if if Russell had avoided him, he would have probably speared him and collected him into T1 anyway.
Yeah.
There's a fair chance that would have happened as well. So I think in that moment they were both going out. But yeah, a bit difficult for Russell. Again, just the curse of Imola. He'll want this track bunned off the calendar ASAP.
2 years in a row he's been chilling in front of Raikkonen and just absolutely binned it. So I think it was a racing incident. I don't like that Russell went so hard on Bottas, really. I like it for the entertainment value.
Oh, no, I do. The thing is as well, I think that is incredibly strategic by Russell as well. He knows that Mercedes seat is up for the taking. He must be aware that this is the year where Bottas could be hanging by a thread. This is actually a proper podcast I want to dedicate to at some point in the near future as well, where we talk about Bottas and Perez, because more than ever, Bottas's job role as the number 2, I think. Really, we saw it in 2017 and 18 to a certain degree, but now more than ever is where Bottas needs to prove his worth again. Now they've got a real fight on their hands against a team with 2 drivers as well that hopefully are going to be able to provide a real fight as well. But yeah, so Russell knows full well that seat could be his. If he just creates that bit of doubt in Bottas's mind, tries to play some mental games with him, who knows? Don't really feel like you can lose too much out in those moments, do you?
No, it's probably worth a go. Although I don't think Toto Wolff will listen to any of it, really, because he'll say that now. For his team. But it's interesting. I certainly think that Bottas has to do better in the future, like qualifying 8th and chilling in 9th.
It was a bit of a nightmare weekend,
wasn't really where you should be when your teammates in the lead fight. So, or for most of it anyway.
Yes, it was not. Again, it was another weekend for Bottas to forget at the end of the day there. Then, of course, you had the red flag, obviously, from that crash. I mean, it was a massive shunt. Obviously, we had Bottas pointing to Russell how many points he just lost in that Grand Prix as well. But yeah, obviously, that brought out the red flag, which saved Lewis Hamilton's race, technically. Again, I saw an outcry on Twitter from people going, that rule should be banned because it benefited Lewis once. It's always been the same. I don't know why anyone doesn't believe it's the same. It's the way Formula 1 works. At the end of the day, otherwise you just get more carnage on the restart because people are having to jump out the way to let each other through. So obviously Hamilton, I think, was strolled down, wasn't it? All got the lap back.
Yeah, it was 7th
to the front runners. Obviously, that still left Schumacher and Mazepin an extra lap down, which was rather depressing for those guys already. But yeah, then of course the restart all got a bit dramatic. Max Verstappen almost binned it. I mean, he almost binned it on the original safety car restart as well. I think a lot of people don't speak about that enough.
I don't remember that.
So on the original safety car, you're on board with Hamilton as they get down in towards the first Ravazza, and Verstappen, almost does the same thing there.
Oh, I do remember seeing that. He got massive wheel spin, didn't he?
Yeah, he almost dropped it there. Well, I mean, he did drop it again, didn't he? But somehow was able to keep hold of it.
And Leclerc with no radio.
It could have been a whole lot worse. Charles Leclerc had no radio, so in a hypothetical world, Verstappen could have gone off. Leclerc would have taken the lead for the start, and then slowed down to the start-finish line because he thought it was a standing start. Yeah, as Lando screams past him and everyone else. But yeah, Charles Leclerc,
the back of him at 200 miles an hour.
Exactly, that could have been a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, obviously Charles Leclerc didn't have radio for the start, like we said, or didn't have radio at all for the second half of the Grand Prix. He could speak to the team, but he couldn't hear them. Not the first time we've heard Ferrari having radio issues. I remember, I think it was Portugal last year. Leclerc said he could hear Hamilton's radio or something. So Ferrari clearly are trying to run some trickery there. There must be some corruption going on in the Italian mafia. Exactly. But obviously that made things very, disappointing for Charles Leclerc because obviously it meant Lando got him straight off the restart. Obviously on the soft tyres there, which they took a big gamble with because they weren't sure they could make it to the end. So obviously, Charles, let's say hypothetically then, Charles Leclerc knew about the restart, Do you reckon he would have held on ahead of Lando to the end of the Grand Prix, or do you reckon the pace Lando had would have been too much anyway?
I think it was more down to the straight line speed, to be honest. We saw, the only reason, the soft tyres obviously helped with the tyre heat up at the start, but whichever one of them got into turn 1 on the restart first, I reckon would have held it, to be honest. The pace with the McLaren and the Ferrari seems very similar. We saw Sainz and Leclerc both able to stay in that train really comfortably.
Yeah.
Behind Norris, obviously the tyres going off would have affected him as well. But had Leclerc held track position, I think he would have got the podium over Norris, but obviously didn't happen. And then that was for second place at that point, but we saw Hamilton coming back through the field at a very quick rate, eventually getting all of them. So.
Yeah, and that was a fair play. Again, that was another one where you realise why Hamilton earns his money. Again, you can talk different track conditions and things like that, but he managed to get past, who was it, Lance Stroll in one lap, and Bottas could do it in half Grand Prix, which is rather worrying.
Yeah, it just shows, how clear-cut Hamilton is better than Bottas, really.
Yeah.
Because if Bottas was in that situation, he's literally going to stay in 8th the whole race, in my opinion.
That's the worrying thing, isn't it? No, I completely agree with you. Now, slightly, obviously, talking about Hamilton's recovery, obviously, he did a fantastic job to get back through the field. I saw some people complaining that the DRS was too powerful. No. Personally, I didn't understand what the issue was about.
Yeah, it was fine. It was a lot more balanced than last year. We saw it, I think it was extended by a couple of metres this year.
It was 100 metres, I think it was extended with.
Because last year it just didn't work and there was no battle. There was 8 overtakes or something, a whole race last year. So it was great. I think there was one, I think it was Hamilton, maybe it was on Stroll or maybe it was on someone else, where it literally got him, I think it was Sainz actually, it got him literally alongside into the braking zone of turn 1, which is exactly what DRS should do.
Exactly. I think that was Stroll. No, I think, was that Seb versus someone? Seb versus Perez, you want
It probably happened a few times, I can't remember.
Yeah, it probably did, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, the DRS I thought was pretty much perfect this weekend. Not too powerful, not underpowered. The Mercedes was just a really quick car.
The thing is, what I don't understand when people say the DRS is too powerful, it's designed to make overtakes happen.
Yeah, what do you want? You just want it to drive around in order.
It's therefore made overtakes happen. If it's going to be incredibly difficult because making the DRS straight longer for one car is going to screw it for another. It just depends on who's got what straight line speed and who they're battling with. It's never going to be perfect for everyone. They can't just decide, a 318 metre DRS zone is perfect at every track. It's beyond a joke.
People just love to complain about anything when
I don't get why there's still hate for DRS. I'm sorry. I just don't understand it.
It's the best option we have at the minute. I do think in a perfect world, F1 cars can race each other without issues, and the slipstream is big enough to just warrant overtaking anyway. But at the minute, that is not the case. So if we don't
I'd rather
have DRS,
have this than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. No DRS would be awful.
Yeah, it was. That's again a story for another day. That's another podcast for another day as well. But then, of course, as the second half of the Grand Prix sort of carries on, you're sort of watching Hamilton climb his way through the field. There are a couple of other things to talk about as well. Raikkonen. We spoke about Perez binning it under the safety car and getting penalised for taking back the position. Raikkonen bins it under safety car and gets penalised for not taking back the position.
Yeah, that was so strange.
Talk me through it.
I think, as far as I understand, it's because it was the lap after the red flag. So it was technically a formation lap because it was a restart. So even though the safety car was out and they were behind the safety car, because it's a formation lap, he has to take back his position, which is just way more complicated than it needs to be. Because Raikkonen went off, he lost 2 places, stayed in his position, gets a 30-second penalty. Perez goes off, loses 2 places, takes them back in the same circumstances, and also gets a penalty. FIA are very strange, but it was unfortunate for Raikkonen because he did finish 9th in a really good race. But
Alfa Romeo. Yeah. I mean, they were 8th and 9th, I think, at one point. Well, 9th and 10th.
Giovanazzi had a plastic bag
phantom pit stop. They dubbed it, didn't they?
Yeah, about a 1-second pit stop to rake a plastic bag out the brake duct.
Yeah, I mean, on the longest pit lane on the calendar, that must be hard. And his home Grand Prix as well. Don't forget.
He's got another one later. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, you Giovanazzi is one of those people that I completely forget is on the Formula 1 grid.
Yeah,
he's just such a nothing character. Yeah, he's just so nothing in Formula 1. But anyway, back to talking about Perez though. Unfortunately, did an Albon towards the end.
Yeah, very much so. It was actually it was the same corner as last year, wasn't it, for Albon?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And it was
he
pretty
did
much the same position, and he was racing Sainz.
Yeah. Sainz
Are we sure? Can we check
Ferraris.
it was definitely Perez racing?
Yeah. Well, there was stuff on Twitter, wasn't there, after Saturday saying that, like, Perez had been replaced and just no one knew it.
Yeah, it was a bit poor from Perez. I think it's hard to judge him too harshly because virtually everyone made a mistake. I was thinking this earlier. Like, apart from Norris, I think all of the top 10 went into the gravel at some point in the race.
And Norris, I think, probably even did something like that at some point. He just didn't get caught on camera. Yeah,
well,
no
Leclerc
one
went
had
off on the formation
race.
lap. Like, Sainz went off about 10 times in the first half of the race. Hamilton, obviously, Verstappen missed up at the restart. Like, all of them made mistakes. It's just some of them
it was such a difficult race.
Some of them timed them better than others, so didn't get punished as much. But Perez, very badly timed mistake. Sort of similar to what Tsunoda did as well. Spinning on the restart and, didn't go very well for him. But they both lost out massively and no points for either, unfortunately.
Yeah, so obviously Perez down in 11th was just a disappointing end to a disappointing day when all was said and done. Then, we kind of forgot to mention it as well, because it kind of was completely forgot about at the end of the Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel retired. I thought that was quite funny for the sole reason that he retired with a lap to go and didn't lose any places because the Haas were that far behind.
Yeah. Did you hear on the radio that Schumacher did the classic league racer tactic of I can't be bothered, so just slowed down to let Verstappen lap him another time?
Yeah. I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
So I don't want to do another lap. I'll just slow down and let him lap me again.
Yeah. Oh, I think we've all done it at some point, haven't we? Let's be fair. But yeah, I mean, Aston Martin had a tricky weekend, but Stroll still got points. Obviously, they both burnt out the brakes before the start.
The brakes caught fire doing laps to the grid, which wasn't great.
Then they both had gearbox sync issues.
And Stroll also cheated, which we didn't mention.
Stroll also cheated, yes.
Did you see that? He went off at the turn at the first chicane.
Yeah,
just overtaking Gasly on the outside, just completely straight lined it and was like, okay, I'm keeping this.
Exactly. I don't blame him. Gasly was that much slower.
Yeah.
But he shouldn't have been able to
came back to bite him at the end. There was actually a good scrap we never saw.
There was, wasn't there?
Ricciardo in 6th and then Stroll and Gasly right behind, who couldn't get past, unfortunately. But
and then, of course, we had Raikkonen, the Alpines and Perez as well, duking out for the last points, which, again, we didn't see any of. Which is rather disappointing. Which is
probably a good thing, really, because we were looking at stuff more interesting for the podium fight. But
there was an element of that as well, wasn't there? But yeah, an interesting Grand Prix then. Certainly, like we said, a lot to get through. Not for the wrong reasons, but not for perfect wheel-to-wheel racing all day long.
It was a bit of the chaos of Formula 1 rather than like Bahrain was almost Formula 1 at its best. This was also really good, but this as a pure racer, almost for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, Formula 1 in its best worst, kind of, in like a weird way. But yeah, obviously Max Verstappen, though, taking the race victory, 2 hours and 2 minutes in the end. Second half of the Grand Prix, he was just gone.
He was so good.
It was no surprise, was it really, with Hamilton out of the picture. Hamilton, though, I mean, he was going to get P2 at the very best, to be honest, today, unless he went perfectly for him. I think the Red Bull, again, was just too fast on race trim. So the fact he was still able to come through for P2 is massive, I think, for Mercedes as well there. Lando, it was sort of weird, wasn't it? You kind of forgot it was his second ever F1 podium because it never really looked in doubt all weekend.
Yeah, he was quality all race. Like, he started, 7th, I think, as well? So he did really well to come through. And it didn't really look in doubt. He was, like, definitely third fastest driver pretty much all weekend, especially in the wet, once Perez was not going too well.
Yes, of course, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz 4th and 5th. Another really good result by Ferrari. I think it's, again, we sort of speak about this battle between them and McLaren this year is going to be spicy. But again, these are the results Ferrari need early on just to build some confidence, to try and get the momentum back again. But McLaren, I'm going to say, still look like a slightly faster car at the moment.
I think that Ferrari is slightly better well-rounded.
Ferrari... No, I don't know.
They've
both got pretty good all-rounded cars. I just think McLaren seems to be ever so slightly better everywhere. And those ever so slightly betters add up.
Yeah. It's actually very close in the constructors already, though.
Yes. Well, they've finished, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th here, and then they finished, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th? Oh, no, Perez was in there last week.
4th, 6th, 7th.
8th,
somewhere else. I can't remember.
It was 8th, yeah. They've all finished pretty much with each other both weekends. Gasly, again, another good result in 7th. A bit of a... I mean, he sort of had all the dramatics at the start and then kind of got, again, like a lot of drivers got saved towards the end.
Yeah.
But he did finish
it's not as good as it could have been for Gasly. I genuinely think the AlphaTauri would be up there, especially in Gasly's hands, because he's a lot better than Tsunoda.
I think, qualifying trim, there's no doubt about it. They're up there with McLaren and Ferrari, but
I think
he's just trying to get the
just
races hooked
been
up.
Going wrong, yeah.
Yeah, it just needs to be hooked up, doesn't it? I'm sure we'll see him battling with them a bit more down the line as well there. Stroll in 8th, again, a good result for him, points on the board, and then Alpine somehow getting a top 10 in the end. Ocon looked good a lot of the weekend, and then Sunday...
Ocon had Alonso as well, I think, for the first time.
Alonso had a nightmare, didn't he?
It was Malaysia 2017 that I said the last time Alonso was out-qualified.
I thought it was early 2018, to be honest, but you probably are right.
No, he whitewashed Van Dorn in 18.
Oh, yeah, no, he did, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it was the back end of 2017, which is kind of insane. But yeah, Alonso just had a nightmare of a weekend, like a lot of drivers did,
still got
and
a point,
still walked away with points somehow, which is fair play to him. Then, of course, like we said, Perez in 11th. Tsunoda, a weekend to forget for him, and then Raikkonen with that penalty. It's Raikkonen, he doesn't know
really
or probably care. Let's be fair. And then, of course, Giovanazzi a lap down, Vettel out, and then Schumacher and Mazepin 2 laps
That's so
down.
funny in the results. You got Vettel DNF, and then Schumacher and Mazepin plus 2 laps.
Exactly. And then, of course, Bottas and both Williams, like we said, on poor Frank Williams' birthday, neither car getting to the end of the race. It was after a qualifying day that looked so good for Williams. It was so disappointing to see both cars out by pretty much half distance.
Russell was only a couple of tenths off Q3, and that would have been mad.
It would have been mad, yeah. They had a good car. Again, it seems to be a track that suits them weirdly well, which is kind of a bit strange because it's not like an extreme track in either way.
No, I think we'll see. Did we race at Hungary last year? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Were they good there?
They were good there. They both got into Q2 there. So it's clearly
the low power
high
tracks.
downforce.
Yeah.
Low power, though. They've got a Mercedes power unit.
Yeah, but that
it
car's
doesn't
so
make
draggy.
sense.
I remember Russell was saying last year, like, they have the best power unit on the grid, but, well,
so
arguably,
much drag,
but so much drag because the bodywork just makes no sense. So, tracks like Hungary and tracks like Imola and stuff like that, probably Monaco they'll be quite good at if they actually race there this year.
They're meant to be, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see about that. But yeah, anyway then, quickly before we round it out then, we'll go with our predictions for Portugal next time out. We'll quickly look at that. Jamie, predictions top 3 in the Portuguese Grand Prix?
I'll back Verstappen again. Why not?
You're backing Verstappen again. You reckon he's going to take the championship lead for the first time in his career, do you?
Yeah, go for it. I think Verstappen, Hamilton, and who was good last year at Portimao, sorry?
Raikkonen for 2 laps.
Raikkonen. I'll go Leclerc. Why not?
You're going Leclerc?
Yeah. Bottas is a fraud. Perez is a fraud as well, so...
Yeah, I am going to go... Oh, I hate to do it. I'm going to have to go Verstappen as well. I don't want to do it.
Come on, back Hamilton. He's good.
Right, I'm going to back Hamilton. Right, fair enough. I'm backing Hamilton. Hamilton win. I'm going to say Verstappen, Perez 2-3.
Nice. A lot of confidence in Valtteri Bottas showing.
Exactly. Better than you saying Gasly was going to finish P3 behind the Red Bulls last weekend.
Done. It wasn't far off.
He was 7th and Perez was 11th.
Yeah, exactly. He beat one Mercedes and one Red Bull.
What do you mean he beat one Mercedes? Mercedes was in the wall.
Exactly. He finished the race. Bottas didn't.
Right, okay. This is why we can't do these top 3s at the end. Just all hell breaks loose at the end of the podcast. But yeah, thank you all though. So much for watching once again. Obviously no Formula 2 action this weekend and neither of us watched Formula Alpine, whatever it was called. So, I mean, we weren't going to discuss that anyway. But yeah, once again though, thank you for the continued support on the series. Let us know your top 3 ready for the Portuguese Grand Prix next time out. Obviously, we will be back next week with another podcast. We've got a few things to talk about before the Portuguese Grand Prix. Obviously, we like to focus these ones on the races and then the off weeks on everything else sort of going on around the world of Formula 1 as well. But yeah, Jamie, anything to add before we round out?
Don't think so. I think that's everything. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back very soon.